Hello, small groups. Pastor Chris Kong here. As a church, we've been going through the series Jesus, the Miracle Worker, and we've been discussing some of the miracles that Jesus performed and how they give us a glimpse into heaven on earth. When I was growing up, my maternal grandmother, who didn't really know Jesus, had a nickname for me. And before I tell you what it was, you have to know a little bit about her, okay? This is who she was. She was one of those people who lived through the 60s and experimented with all kinds of substances, if you know what I mean. She had one of those personalities that could only be described as she was a free spirit. And as I dig into the depths of my memories with her, I always remember her calling me her magic man. Magic man. She always meant it in an endearing way, but you might be wondering why she called me that nickname. Well, when I was born very prematurely. At just a few hours old, they put me into a helicopter and brought me to Vancouver Children's Hospital. At this same time, my paternal grandmother, my other side, and grandfather let their small group in their church know that there was a problem with my heart. They got their prayer chain activated, and many people were praying for me at that time. My mom was unable to make the journey with me over to the hospital on the helicopter, so she took the ferry, came up to meet with me, and when she reunited with me at the hospital, the doctors had told her, "We don't know what happened, but we can't find a hole in Chris's heart. The machines over in Victoria must have been malfunctioning." So, my maternal grandmother thought me magical. And let's be honest, I consider it a compliment being called Magic Man. I think I'm pretty magical too. She was so earnest, but what she lacked was an understanding that this event wasn't an act of magic. It was actually a miracle originating from the very one who created me, the one who knit me together in my mother's womb. And my testimony, I know, brings me such hope because I know that if he can do that for me, he's able to do that for anybody. And he did a miracle in my life, and I will be forever grateful. I'll forever testify of that miracle. But for today's purpose, I want to remind you that all of the miracles of Christ, like the one in my life and the ones written, and even the ones that the writers couldn't record, they all pale in comparison to what C.S. Lewis calls the grand miracle. In John 1:14, we hear the testimony of John. Verse 14, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." Jesus, the grand miracle. Think of the Christmas story. Jesus arrived amidst miraculous circumstances. There were angels testifying, a virgin birth, shepherds, a star, wise men, even an evil king, and the list goes on and on. The incarnation is by far the greatest miracle that mankind has ever seen. The Word became flesh. He made his dwelling among us. God is eternal. He took on a temporary body so that in his perfection, he could perform the greatest miracle of all. He died and he rose again, defeating death, canceling the judgment of sin that was upon us as an act of sin in the garden. If you think about it, healing a hole in my heart was nothing compared to Jesus' death and his resurrection. But the miracle in my life points to the greatest miracle. It points to someone greater. It points to something greater. A purpose that transcends my little life. That Jesus would stoop so low to redeem me and to redeem you. C.S. Lewis describes it this way in his book Miracles. "But Jesus goes down to come up again and bring the whole ruined world up with him." One has the picture of a strong man stooping lower and lower to get himself underneath some great complicated burden. He must stoop in order to lift. He must almost disappear under the load before he incredibly straightens his back and marches off with the whole mass swaying on his shoulders. And that's truly what Jesus did. He carried away our iniquity, our sin, our shame. He took away the finality of death and opened the door for us to have an eternal communion with himself. It truly is a grand miracle, isn't it? If this information, if this grand miracle doesn't travel deep down into our hearts and rattle around in our minds rent-free, then we may be in a little bit of trouble. We have to let this miracle inform every part of our story, every part of our lives. And we also have to be careful that we don't just worship the miracle itself or the provision of the miracle. Yes, we need forgiveness. Yes, we need grace. Yes, we have been set free. But who set these things in motion and brought about the completion of the miracle? It was always and always will be Jesus. When miracles happen, we respond with awe and we respond with wonder. Let's not lose the awe and the wonder that comes with our salvation. And maybe you think you've lost that part of it, the spark. You can pray like David did in Psalm 51, verse 12. He said this, "Restore to me the joy of your salvation, and grant me a willing spirit to sustain me." Restore to me the joy of your salvation, Lord. The miracle, the greatest miracle of all, is Jesus, his death and his resurrection, and we need him deeply. In your groups, if you feel comfortable, would you take the time to share a miracle that Jesus has done in your life? And then would you talk about how that miracle points you towards the grand miracle, Jesus? What does that miracle reveal about God's character? Well, that's our thought for today. Know that I'm praying for you and I love you, and we'll talk to you again soon. God bless.